Beth stood in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing her hair as sunlight streamed through the half-drawn curtains. She smiled at her reflection, admiring her perfect life. At 37, Beth had it all: 3 well-behaved children, a loving husband, and a career that provided independence. And then, of course, there was Derek, the man she had most recently added to her web of desires. Her marriage to Andrew had begun when she was only 18, and he worshipped her from the start. They had built a life together, 3 children between 14 and 18 who adored their mother, a beautiful house, and a stable routine. Andrew had always been supportive, even when she revealed her ongoing affair with Nathan, a man she had met before her marriage. He hadn't resisted when she told him she was deserving of happiness, that her weekly meetups with Nathan didn't detract from their life together. In fact, she convinced him that it somehow made her better, more whole. Andrew, sweet, naive Andrew, accepted it because he adored her. He always had, from the day they met. He never questioned her desires, her reasoning, or the contradictions in her life. He accepted her justifications as gospel. And she had come to believe them herself. But recently, there was something new: a coworker named Derek. Unlike Nathan, who had been a regular fixture in her life, Derek was a wild card. He was 44, single, and confident in ways that intrigued her. He made her feel alive in ways Andrew never could anymore, and even Nathan, though exciting in his own right, didn't have the mystery that Derek possessed. Their fling started out innocently enough: glances across the office, long lunches filled with flirtation. But soon, it escalated into something more. The passion they shared in secret corners of the office building was intoxicating. And for the first time in years, Beth felt a pang of genuine emotion. Derek wasn't just a fling, she wanted him. He wasn't like the others. He had power over her in ways that terrified and thrilled her. But Derek was different in another way, too. He didn't remain ignorant to her convoluted life like Andrew or passive like Nathan. Derek started asking questions, probing into her life outside the office. At first, Beth had found it amusing, the way he was so curious about her personal life. He made her feel important, as though her tangled affairs were worthy of fascination. But soon, that curiosity took on a more unsettling edge. One evening, Derek leaned in close after they'd spent hours together in his apartment. His voice was low, almost menacing, as he asked, "So, how many men do you think you can juggle before you drop one?" Beth stiffened. It was a joke, wasn't it? But his eyes had held no humor. "Juggle," she laughed lightly, dismissing his tone. "It's not like that, Derek. I deserve everything, right?" Derek interrupted, his voice still dangerously calm. "But what about them? Your husband, your kids, that other guy, what's his name, Nathan? They're just there to give you what you want, right? No consequences. You've got it all figured out, don't you, Beth?" She froze. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had dared. But she wasn't about to let some man, a fling, turn the tables on her. She leaned back, giving him a cold smile. "I deserve happiness, Derek. And I'm not ashamed to take it." He didn't argue. Instead, he just smiled, a slow, unnerving grin that sent a chill down her spine. That night, she went home feeling unsettled for the first time in years. She tried to brush it off, telling herself that Derek's reaction was just jealousy, that he was frustrated because he couldn't have her all to himself. But as the days went by, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. It started small, texts from Derek that grew increasingly cryptic. At first, they were playful, but soon they took on a darker tone. "How's your perfect life treating you today?" one read. Another, "Wonder what Andrew would think if he knew everything." Beth ignored them, but the unease inside her grew. She could feel Derek slipping out of her control, and it terrified her. He wasn't like Andrew or Nathan, who were easily manipulated. Derek was something else, something more dangerous. Then, one afternoon, as she was finishing up at work, she noticed Derek waiting outside her office building. He didn't approach her, didn't say a word. He just stood there, watching her with that unsettling smile. When she got into her car and drove away, she saw him in her rearview mirror, still standing there, his gaze following her until she disappeared around the corner. The next day, she found a letter in her mailbox. It was from Derek. Inside was a single piece of paper with one word scrawled across it, monster. Beth crumpled it up and threw it away, her heart pounding. But the message was clear, Derek knew. He saw through her facade, the one she had so carefully constructed over the years. And now, he was determined to tear it down. Over the next few weeks, the psychological games intensified. Derek sent emails, letters, and messages that all hinted at the same thing: he was going to expose her. He knew about Nathan, about her manipulation of Andrew, about the lies she had told to keep her life perfectly balanced. He knew everything, and he wasn't going to keep it a secret. Beth's once perfect life began to unravel. She found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, waiting for Derek to strike. At home, Andrew noticed her growing paranoia, but she dismissed it as stress from work. Her children, always well-behaved and adoring, began to sense the tension in the house, but they didn't ask questions. They trusted their mother implicitly, just as Andrew did. But Beth knew the truth: she was losing control. Derek had become a predator, and she was his prey. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Beth received another text from Derek. This one was different. It wasn't a threat or a taunt, it was a picture. The image was of Andrew and the kids, sitting in the living room, laughing together. Derek had taken it through the window of their home. Beth's blood ran cold. He wasn't just threatening to expose her, he was watching her family. In a panic, she tried to call him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She left message after message, begging him to stop, to leave her and her family alone. But there was no response. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house made her jump. Every shadow seemed to loom larger, more menacing. She checked the locks on the doors 3 times before finally collapsing onto the bed, her heart racing. As she lay there in the darkness, her mind raced. Derek wasn't just going to expose her, he was going to destroy her. He had turned her life into a twisted game, and she didn't know the rules. The next morning, she woke to find another letter in the mailbox. This one was different from the others. Inside was a small note that read, "Time's up, Beth." Panicking, she rushed to her car, determined to confront Derek once and for all. She drove to his apartment, her hands shaking as she gripped the steering wheel. When she arrived, she pounded on the door, but there was no answer. She tried the handle, it was unlocked. She stepped inside, her heart racing. The apartment was empty, silent. She called out his name, but there was no response. As she made her way through the rooms, she saw something that made her blood run cold. On the walls were pictures, dozens of them, of her, Andrew, the kids. Each one carefully pinned up, each one a snapshot of her life. In the center of the room was a single photo, one that she hadn't seen before. It was of her, sitting at the kitchen table, a cold smile on her face as she looked at her family. Below the photo, in Derek's handwriting, was one word: monster. Beth stumbled back, her mind racing. Derek had been right all along. She was the monster, the one who had manipulated, lied, and used the people who loved her. And now, she was paying the price. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Derek. "You wanted everything, Beth. Now you've got it. Enjoy your new life." The message sent chills down her spine. She looked around the room, realizing that she had lost everything: her family, her lies, her control. Derek hadn't needed to physically harm her to destroy her. He had exposed her for what she truly was: a manipulator, a liar, a monster. And now, she was alone, trapped in the horror of her own making. As the reality of her situation sank in, Beth collapsed to the floor, tears streaming down her face. She had always thought that she deserved everything, but now she understood the truth: she had never deserved anything at all.